there's our countdown. All right, here we go. Okay. All right, so here we are with Dr. Marnie, and today we are talking about catching the red flags and releasing the toxicity, right? So, what we found oftentimes is that people will have caught red flags, but they won't release the person from their lives. So, tonight we're going to talk about some of the common red flags and the reasons why it can be challenging for people to release the person from their lives. So, we when we planned this conversation today, we talked a lot about self compassion and sometimes how people who have a lot of self compassion will tend to have strong compassion for others as well, right? So let's talk about that. Let's dive into some of those insights that you and I discussed around self compassion and why people who often see the good in others tend to take longer to release those people who are exhibiting red flags, right?
Yeah, most definitely. Just like how the abusers will project their negative behaviors onto other people, to their victims, they will accuse them of lying and cheating and stealing when that's not what they would ever do. That's what they are doing. They're looking in a mirror. We also, as empathetic, loving beings, project our goodness onto other people. So,
Mm,
like, we think that because we are honest and caring and would do anything for anyone, that other people we surround ourselves with would do the same, but that's not necessarily true. And so many of us have had to learn the hard way that no, not everyone, not even a best friend, will have your back in times like these. You really start to realize who your support system is, and who should be released from this. But they say we ignore red flags, and there's a reason why that is said like that, because it is so common to know of them, to realize something's not right, but we don't act on it because we project goodness onto other people, and we give them excuses, and we think, okay, well, it will get better, and sometimes it does get better. There's a lot of intermittent reinforcement where there's the good mixed with the bad, that kind of keep us hooked.
mm,
And some of it is, we've made a vow, we've made a commitment, and we want to honor that, especially if there are children involved in the situation. It's a big dilemma. It's a very big decision to leave, but sometimes, when you need to escape, you need to escape.
mhm. Oh, that's good. When you know you need to escape, you need to escape. And you talked about some of that good mixed with the bad. Do you think that that's why that term love bombing is such a powerful tool in kind of hooking someone into that type of relationship?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the love bombing in the beginning is just full throttle. You are on a pedestal. They like everything that you like. It's amazing. If you say that you like classical music, they'll say they love classical music. And they'll
Mhm,
even research different classical music and take you to concerts or something, when really they might be a heavy metal person, and
mhm,
classical is totally the farthest from their mind, but they want to mirror you, and they want to rope you in and show you how many similarities you have, like you've met your knight in shining armor, you've met your prince charming. And
mhm,
so that will go on for a long time until they really kind of have you hooked to them, to where you are in love with them. You're planning a future together, that type of thing. But then it's not much longer after that, there's more intermittent reinforcement, where they kind of have already kind of started another double life or something like that that you're unaware of. And so they don't give you that same amount of attention, and they start criticizing you and belittling you and gaslighting you to believe that you're confused, you're not seeing things that you saw, you're you know you're not capable, you're not worthy, whatever it is. But just as that goes on for a while, then they'll come back and they'll surprise you with gifts or a trip or just a lot of attention.
Hmm.
And so then you're kind of roped back in thinking, well, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were having a bad week or month or whatever. Um, so I think that intermittent reinforcement kind of keeps you hopeful, along with your own preconceived ideas of what you want in a relationship. You don't want to give up on something that you've already invested in.
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. And it's unfortunate because a lot of times, like the ones that can conceal their intentions for long enough are able to do so. But generally speaking, what happens after that love bombing phase, especially if it's a short-lived kind of experience, is that it blows up pretty big and
Hmm.
becomes a very push and pull type of relationship. Now, how can someone identify that? Because the thing about love bombing is that when someone's catering to your ego a little bit, they're telling you that they cherish you, they like enjoy spending time with you, they want to be around you 24/7. How do you start to identify the difference between someone genuinely being interested and a healthy bond developing versus someone that is intentionally love bombing you for manipulation later on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I wish there was an easy answer, because if there was, it could avoid a lot of pain for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, the reality is these people are actors, they're predators, and you are the prey. And so they you're not their first rodeo. They've done this before to other people. So I would say it's important to just kind of see if the attention changes, if they start to be more secretive, if
Mhm.
they start to spend a lot more time on their phone or away from the home,
Mhm.
um, cancel dinner dates or something like that. Oh, I have to work late, stuff like that. Start just, paying attention to those kinds of things, because then you can experience the love bombing kind of fading away a little bit. But,
Mhm.
they're masters at what they do. So it'll come back around again. I mean, some of these people, men and women, it's not always gender specific. But they can juggle two, three, four, five people at one time. It's like they don't want to let go of their exes. They want to stay friends or stay connected with them, because they're going to return to them. As soon as you are out of the picture, um, then they might even be public about returning to their former flames. But they look up their, that I mean, they don't let go of these people, and they're constantly on the prowl. They're
Mhm.
constantly on the prowl looking for new supply, they call it.
Mhm.
Where they can get someone at work that really admires them, and they can just flirt with them in a way to, kind of have them on the sidelines, ready and waiting until, there's an opportunity. So I just think you just need to pay attention to a lot of these different things. And, the love bombing is just one of the red flags. There
Yeah.
are so many others.
Now, what about if someone, let's say that they have suspicions that they might be getting love bombed, right? What happens, let's say, if they test the waters by trying to slow down the pace with the other person?
Mhm.
Would that help, you think?
I think that's a very healthy thing to do anyway. I mean, and it's very easy to just get wrapped up and fall passionately in love with someone, but the reality is that, we need to know who we're dealing with. And so just in general, a very good rule is to take things slow. And there's no rush for anything. And so actually, if you start to kind of break away a little bit, um there's something that they will do where they will come back, and it's called hoovering. They will
Mhm.
hoover you. So, like, for example, in my personal situation, very, very excited to spend the rest of my life with, this one person. And then I somehow found out that his old girlfriend was living with him while we were together, and I didn't know it. Somehow that was concealed. Like I that was unbelievable. So I broke it off right away and said, no, I can't go for that. And but but that person, a few months later, hoovered me back in, which is something that happens to a lot of people. Now, of course, I was a lot younger at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but he professed his love. I'm the only one. That was a mistake, whatever. And of course, I believed so much of that, and that should have been a huge red flag to me to say, wait a minute, this isn't the real deal. This is what's called hoovering, and you should, realize what it is. And, back then, I mean, I'm 60 years now, 60 years
Mm-hmm.
old, back when I was right before I got married, we didn't have podcasts like this, and we didn't have open conversations like this. I mean, just imagine the generations before us that were dealing with narcissistic personality types and psychopaths and, malevolent intentioned people. They had like no support system, you
Yeah.
know. In fact, they were probably told, don't question anything, and just this is, what your life is, and you signed up for it, and don't rock the boat. But
Wow.
yeah, so you've got to be careful even when you step back. They might go along with that too, but they might come back full force. So you
Mm-hmm.
need to just kind of be aware of the patterns. That's why it's good to have podcasts like this. It's good to read some of the literature on this, because really so many of these abusers follow the same playbook, and they you know I could be describing a situation, and someone across the world could say, that's exactly my situation, and
Mm-hmm.
someone in the next state could say, that's exactly my situation. So you know there are very common threads with the behaviors of these type of individuals.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Anybody who's not familiar with these types of abuse should look up something called the power and control wheel, because
Hmm.
that outlines different types of abuse outside of traditional domestic abuse, because that's what we often think of when we think of, domestic abuse, we think of physical violence. But look into the power and control wheel, and it kind of open your eyes to more types of manipulation and violence and domestic violence that falls into that category.
Right.
Um,
And actually, if people are post the relationship and are still struggling because it takes years to unpack what you've gone through and to heal and to work through this, there is also another one of these wheels. When you talk about wheels, it's like a nice chart that kind of explains, the patterns, the very common patterns. There's also a post separation wheel that's out there that will tell you some of the kind of red flags, things to look for after you leave your abuser, whether they discard you or whether you discard them.
mm,
So it's definitely a journey. There's a lot of healing that needs to take place, but luckily, nowadays there's some resources for people,
mhm.
pretty accessible resources.
That's really good. I just want to repeat that one more time. That's the post separation wheel for people
Yeah.
who haven't heard about it
Hmm.
yet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So we talked a little bit about love bombing, and I know you said you had some red flags that you added to the list too. So I want to make sure
Sure.
we kind of trade off and get to them all today. So what's your red flag?
Well, I would say one big red flag to look for, when you think you might be dealing with an abuser, a toxic person, would be isolation.
Mm,
When you find yourself isolated from your friends and family, they have been working on that little by little. They don't want you, they want you all to themselves. They don't want you to have a support system out there. So when the bad behavior happens, like whether it's forgery, money manipulation, affairs, um, you know, all sorts of kind of abuse, they don't want you going to a support person and getting help from them. So they will isolate you.
mhm,
And these abusers have been known to isolate their own children from each other. Like the brothers and sisters don't have a relationship with each other because they they want the secrets kept. They don't want people to compare notes. And
Mm,
so you can, as a victim, begin to even isolate yourself. And
mm,
you might think, well, I would never do that. But it's amazing how skilled they are in getting you to isolate yourself. So they might say something like, because I care about you, I just want to tell you that this friend of yours came on to me, or I think she's no good, or I just wanted to tell you, don't say anything to them, but they're involved in some illegal activities or something like that. You should really keep your distance. When all that's made up, a lot of it is
mhm,
actually projection from what they are doing. They do the illegal things, they do the bad behavior. But
mm,
so they will tell you this under the guise of, oh, I care about you, I'm concerned, I just want you to know, but don't say anything. Of course they don't want you to say anything because your friend would be like, what the heck, that's not
mm,
the case at all. So then you end up pulling back from some people, um, because you think, wow, my partner really cares about me. Wow, I'm glad I have someone looking out for me, when really it's a strategy to
mhm,
isolate you. So, one big red flag, in addition to the gaslighting that we kind of talked about, is
mhm.
isolation.
Oh, that's so good. And I'm glad you brought that up because there's also like a flip side to this that
Hmm.
I didn't really understand before I actually went through it myself. And so what I experienced was my ex-spouse actually calling different family members and different
Hmm.
friend groups
Hmm.
and telling them that like he was concerned about me and that,
Hmm.
kind of painting a really strange picture because he couldn't isolate me from my friends and family. I just wasn't
Right.
going to, but he used them in a different way, right? And so
Right, right. So
also
think about that violation of contacting your friends and family.
mhm,
My abuser did this even with our own children. He would actually, the kids are adults, close to their 30s. And somehow the abuser, the alienating, parent, he would call up teammates or high school friends of one of the kids and say, listen, I just want you to know that so and so is not doing well, don't contact him or whatever. And and I got wind of that, and it was like, they will contact your family or your circle or your employment. They could actually jeopardize your job,
mhm,
um because they are setting the stage. They are very busy people. They're, with their own sick minds. They spend a lot of time not only juggling money and juggling relationships, but they are constantly, at work doing their predatory job of
mhm.
setting the stage to just destroy you. It's amazing to think that someone would want to put that much effort into harming another person, which is so foreign for so many of us to even understand, because we don't operate that way. It's very hard to think like a criminal when you are not a criminal.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why it catches so many, like you said, good people with integrity, normal, average people, even with like, like it
Right.
catches everybody off guard, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Ooh,
definitely.
that's really good. So, okay, I want to go back and lighten it up a little bit and talk
Sure.
about like the early dating signs so that way we can kind of like help people before before it gets started, right?
You're
So
right.
this is an easy one to practice with friends, with coworkers, with relationships, with anything. And something that's easy to spot earlier on is they don't respect your boundaries.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So everyone
And
has
they'll
this
constantly try to push the boundaries.
exact.
They might verbally say, "Oh, I respect your boundaries," and that's good, but their actions speak a lot louder than their words, because they will push those boundaries and get you, little by little. They're testing you to see how much you'll take, how
Mhm,
much you'll put up with. And yeah, so definitely learning how to set boundaries is very important. And I know we want to focus on the people just getting into these relationships, but I'll tell you, that's kind of like a lifelong process, learning how to you know, set up healthy boundaries for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's with family members, sometimes you know, you might realize when you're uncovering everything that some of these other people in your life, like a best friend or a family member, you know, or a neighbor, they are aligned with the abuser. They're not aligned with you, and and that's a tough realization, you know. And so at some point you need to say, you know, I I have found personally that you don't have to actually tell the person, listen, I need to put up a boundary, and I need some space or something like that. It's best to just do it. Just do it and don't explain, because the people on the other end of it will make up excuses. They'll challenge you. They'll twist it all around. It's just not worth it, because you'll never really see eye to eye with someone who you've decided, hey, I need to put up some boundaries with you. You probably will never see eye to eye with that person, and it can be very painful, because you know, you might have a history with this person for a long time, but
Yeah.
you know, for your own safety, for your own mental well-being, that you know, you need to take care of yourself. And that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you don't love them, but you know, you can love them from afar, and it doesn't mean you need to put up with the day-to-day, you know, constant conflict and chaos.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm glad you called that out because boundaries do begin and end with us. And so, again, some of the mistakes that we make in trying to be polite or trying to be communicative
Hmm.
or trying to be open and transparent, right? Our boundaries, they don't have to do with other people. They have to do with ourselves. So I'm glad
Yeah,
you called that out.
definitely.
Okay, so another early red flag dating sign, they check in frequently. Now,
Yeah, they want to know your whereabouts all the time. I even had a neighbor one time whose husband would, you know, the minute she would leave the house to go over to another neighbor's house or something, he would follow her, he'd call her, he'd, you know, he'd even come over and say, where are you, why are you going? And I mean, she never had any kind of freedom like that. And I would think, wow, you know, he's really possessive, and that to me was a red flag. But she didn't see it that way. Oh, he cares about me, he just wants to make sure, you know, I'm okay. But some people want to keep tabs on you at all times, and they will crack into your phone, into your passwords, into your email. They want to they want to monitor you. In fact, these days, some of these abusers put tracking devices on your phone or in your purse or something like that. You know, that new Apple, I forgot what it's called. It's
unfortunately,
Apple Tag, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, you know, I've, you know, even my own children, you know, was they were like, "Oh, this is such a wonderful gift." Well, think about it. It's actually a tracking device, and it's not necessarily a wonderful thing. And but you have to be careful of that kind of thing. That some of these people will get so possessive, they want to know your whereabouts, and part of it is also because they're leading a double or triple life, and they want to coordinate timing so
Hmm.
that, you know, they can do the immoral, unethical things that they are going to do where you are preoccupied with something else. They love
Yeah.
it when you go away for a weekend or take a vacation, you know, without them, because then they have free reign. But yeah, they want the whereabouts known all the time.
They want to know that they're not going to run into you while they're out doing what they got to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that is
Hmm.
true. Oh my gosh, yeah. And I never like I remember thinking to myself like, "Oh, that's cool that we travel separately from time to time." Like quite
Hmm.
often actually. But
Yeah.
like as I was like, "Oh my god, it was right under my nose," you know?
Yes.
Whole
Yep.
time.
Same with me, same with so many other people.
Yeah.
It's you know, you can look back, and in fact, there were some of the people that he had affairs with, he was involved with, that actually came to our house just as I was leaving with the kids. And I'd think to myself, well, God, that's really strange why this person from his work would be here. You
Mm,
know, but I just was like, okay, you guys need to talk or something. Yeah, I have an appointment with the kids. And so we left. I mean, looking back now, I think, oh my God, this happens so much. And
Yeah,
maybe that's the thrill for them. The thrill could be, not getting caught or just risking it so close. I mean, you even hear about celebrities that end up having affairs with their nannies, or, right under the nose of the people, which, it happens.
I see. I would never be so bold to do it like at the house. Like if you were gonna do it, at
Well,
least
but
protect
the
my
thing is,
family.
you would not even, don't even try to go there, because this isn't part of who we are. We would never even try to, be that sneaky or coordinate, rendezvous or something like that. That's just not how we are made. So it's very hard to really put ourselves in their shoes. Because we're not made that way, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
we make commitments and we kind of think everyone is good and honest.
Mm. Well, one thing I will say, because I like transparency, right? So for me, I actually ended up going down a totally different path and stepping outside due to a lot of the push and pulls that was going on in my
Mhm,
relationship. So
mhm,
the dangling of like, if you do this, we'll have more sex. If you do
mhm,
that, we'll have
mhm,
more sex. And I was doing so much that I couldn't keep up everything that I was juggling and doing. And so it sent me somewhere
mhm.
else. So
Well,
it,
and that's good that you can come to terms with that, because really you can't go back and change the past. You can learn from what you did, and at the time that is how you felt like you needed to handle the situation. So, yeah.
yeah, I
We
wish I
all
would
have
have
we all
moved.
have a different journey.
Yeah, but you know what? I think one thing that I will say for people that get put in those types of situations where, like, it's they talk about the body, they talk about all these different things to kind of get you insecure, right? One thing I would say is like just try to hold on to your integrity as much as possible, because that's the
Yeah,
one thing I regretted about that whole like situation is how could I let this person really like get me outside of my character, because that's not
right.
not how I was raised.
Right. And one thing that has gotten me through, um, and to remain positive throughout everything that I have been through, is staying true to my integrity. My values of honesty and goodness and love that I had before are still my values now.
Yeah.
So I'm actually practicing forgiveness, which
Hmm.
I didn't think I'd ever get to that point. Um, I pray for my abuser and abusers everywhere, that they will see the light and want to start treating people with kindness and honesty. And I sincerely mean that. I want good for humanity. Um, but, at the same time, you need to, be discerning. Even though you're staying true to your values of integrity, honesty, love, goodness, you need to be discerning then a little bit more about who you let in your life and who you keep in your life.
Exactly, exactly. That's a big
Yeah.
part of it, a big part of the journey. Yeah. And like we talked about earlier, we're both empaths, and that has been something that, I've had to work on. And
Mhm.
for people who also identify as empaths, there is a book, it's called The Empath Survival Guide.
Mhm.
And that is a really good one to start developing some coping mechanisms, developing some, boundaries around yourself in that respect as well. Because yeah, it's a journey, it's a process. It really is.
Right. And being an empath is really a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk about the blessing part of it because we always hear about the curse.
Well, really, the fact that we can almost feel what other people are feeling, we can almost anticipate, their needs. We're able to help a lot of people. There are some people that, our paths have crossed, and because we're empathetic, we change their lives by just being who we are, being the loving, caring person that we are.
Mhm.
So there are many blessings to being an empath. We love deeply.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we really do. And you know what? We can feel the energy of a room. Oh my gosh. And like
Mhm, mhm.
without speaking. I remember one of my friends, we went to some event and we both were feeling a lot of discomfort and I could really feel a lot coming from her. And I like put my hand on her back and she was like, "How did you know I was I was I just
Right,
know." It's like the
right.
superpower. Okay.
Yeah.
So the next one, or actually no, let's do your next one. Your next red flag.
Well, I would say we touched on it a little bit, but secrecy,
Mhm.
whether if they are a secret agent man
Yeah.
or a secret agent woman, if they are secretive, that is also a red flag, where they're either always on their phone, they hide their phone, they make sure you never know their many, 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 many passwords. And if you ever were to find out, you'll see that they embed codes into their passwords, and they can really be pretty bold, just because they think no one will find out, and so they have fun. It's kind of like they entertain themselves with this type of thing. But secrecy is a big one, where you know they won't tell you where they've been,
Mhm.
even though you think it's like no big deal. um, they might be someone that has to work late at work all the time, but their job really doesn't require that. And
Mhm.
you don't want to necessarily become a detective, and go that route. And but at some point, sometimes you do need to sort of put the pieces of the puzzle together and connect the dots. But I would say secrecy is a big red flag. And when they're secret about certain things in their past, when they won't, they like, I remember my abuser wouldn't even tell us, you know um who they cared about as far as political affiliations. And I don't want to go down that route, but so much so that they will keep secret something that, what's the big deal? Why are you keeping it a secret? you know so they keep secrets, and be concerned about that.
Why the small secrets though? Because that seems like a no big deal type of secret.
Yeah. Oh, they're testing you. It's
Oh,
all still part of the test,
I see.
to see how much they can get away with and how much you'll accept, and
Mhm.
so many of us just say, well, I guess it's no big deal, and we
Mhm.
just move on.
And we don't
And
even think much about it because it is no big deal if they just answered or did. Yeah, I see.
right, right. But so it's part of the strategy, I believe.
Okay, that makes sense. And you
Yeah.
had me laughing over here when you said just the secrecy because I remember he would log into his friends' Facebooks. He wouldn't keep a Facebook,
Mhm.
but he would log into his friends' Facebooks. And I was like, why don't you just get your own? You're on there all the
Right.
time.
And some of these people will use aliases. They'll have different names, or they
Mhm.
might even have 5, 10, 20 different email addresses.
Yes,
And so they have many different accounts that they are juggling. It is just, when I think about these abusers, I just think how exhausting it is to be them.
yeah.
That they have to keep all of this stuff juggling. And that's why eventually the mask slips, because they can't keep it up all the time.
That makes so much sense. It's because they get so tired of
They're
having to.
worn out. Yeah.
Okay,
It's a lot of work to be a secret agent man. It's a lot of work.
that makes a lot of sense. Wow.
And another red flag, is money manipulation. It's a huge one. So, like, if they slowly get you to start buying everything, and then they need you to give them some money because, they're going to get paid, but it's not for a week or two. Can you float them?
Mhm.
Or, really, your credit is better. Why don't we put, the house in your name, when really they then they'll eventually switch it to their name so that they'll steal your assets. At one point, with joint investments, I mean, when you're not involved in your finances and you allow another person in the relationship to kind of take care of everything,
Mhm.
you are, I'm definitely guilty of this, where I kind of relinquish that, thinking, oh, well, he's got good intentions, all our money will be for our family. Well, that wasn't the case at all.
Mhm.
And then you find out what they do with, any kind of investments. They're constantly juggling money, and they might control you to where they'll say, you can't have a checking account, you're really not good with figures and stuff.
Mhm.
Or they'll give you an allowance and say, you're only allowed to spend this much. And I'm trying to think of, even though my ex-husband made double my salary and I had a pretty good salary as a teacher, I don't think I ever took my kids to a mall once because I didn't believe we had money to
Mm,
do things. And so I would go to Goodwill and shop or go to garage sales, and I made sure that we had a beautiful home on a small budget, when really I was conned. I was conned by a professional.
yeah. Mm, I was conned by a professional. Yeah.
So money manipulation, isolation, love bombing, gaslighting, secrecy,
Hmm.
those are all, many red flags to look out for. And just follow your gut intuition. If your stomach is turned and your heart is broken and your head is hurting and you're kind of feeling something is not right, it's kind of this cognitive dissonance where something's not right. It probably isn't right. Follow your gut intuition.
Yeah,
We don't
absolutely.
do that enough. We need to follow our intuition.
And I think that's because a lot of us too, either one, haven't seen healthy relationships because I'd never seen like a healthy marriage before
Hmm.
getting into marriage myself. And then two, I think that sometimes because we haven't really seen healthy marriages or we haven't healed through some of the stuff that, we don't even know necessarily exist, we're apt to say, oh, is that a trauma response that I'm having, or is this really my gut feeling? Like all being an adult makes you like really over analyze and overly question, your
Sure.
gut feelings and your gut intuition. So I like that. Really trust your gut.
And then, after, when you eventually escape the situation, it is so important for you to do the inner shadow work. You need to, as painful as it is, you need to address your own childhood wounds. You need to look at your own dynamics in your family of origin.
Mhm.
And, so many times things are intergenerational. So you might not have thought your dad was an abuser, but now looking back at it after you've gone through it, you might see very similar patterns that you are playing out because that is what you knew, that is what you saw. It was very, very hard for me to come to the realization. I knew my parents got divorced and I knew it was really high conflict and all of that. But it wasn't until I was much older that I really could look at it with a different perspective and see that a lot of patterns are repeated.
Yes.
Like, for example, my dad divorced my mom and uh, mentally abused her tremendously. He ended up marrying someone in our neighborhood, you
Mm,
know, um, which they probably were involved, earlier on or whatever. Well, the same thing has happened in my situation, so um, just through legal paperwork, because these abusers love to continue to take you to court. I'm I've been filed for divorce over 10 years ago and my abuser's still taking me to court over
mhm,
all sorts of things. It doesn't matter that I moved from Chicago to the Caribbean. I mean, they want to still obsess and stalk you and harass you, and they want to be connected to you somehow still. They have trouble moving on. However, they do move on. My ex is
mhm,
with our neighbor, that we lived next to for, 20 something years. Well, looking back, that is the same kind of pattern that was in my own family of origin,
mhm.
and so you really kind of think, wow, I should have seen this coming, but we don't, and that's why we talk about these things now, and we try to heal, and we try to bring awareness to other people, to save them the heartache if possible, you
Absolutely.
know but
Yeah.
but it is an individual journey. We all have to kind of approach this ourselves in our own way.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
found writing to be very healing for me. I mean, the writing helped me put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Hmm.
And really, I think there's another. You mentioned a lot of different books that are great for your audience to read. One amazing book is called The Body Keeps Score, and it's a very
Ooh.
technical book. It's very hard to read. Um, and I do a lot of reading and it's still a little hard for me, but the body keeps score because we keep the trauma in our bodies.
Mhm.
And writing and speaking and sharing our stories and providing inspiration and hope to other people, that actually gets these traumas out of our body and onto a page or away from us. And there is something very healing about that.
Yeah.
Just like meditation is healing, or being out in nature, or pursuing your passions. If you're someone that likes to run, if you're someone that likes to paint, if you're someone that likes to, work in the garden, whatever it is, just getting outside of yourself,
Mm.
quieting your mind, but releasing some of this
Yeah.
terrible stuff that's in us, it really frees our body up, and that has a positive impact on our mind.
Mm. Indeed, it does. Wow, that's really good stuff. I
Mhm,
like
yeah.
that. I wrote it down, so I'll make sure I put it in the in the chat
Right,
or
right. The body
body
keeps score.
body cube score. I like that. Okay, so let's continue. Again, we're gonna kind of pivot back to. I like that we're getting deep, but I also want to make sure I cover folks who are still in that
Oh,
early
sure,
stages. Um,
sure.
one of the red flags here is that all of their exes are crazy.
Oh,
That's
yeah, of
what
course.
they say. Yeah.
Yeah. Something's always wrong with this other person. You are the best thing I ever found. You know, Girlfriend A, B, and C, there was something flawed by all of them.
Hmm.
And they're crazy when really they could be perfectly wonderful. They just got tired of them or whatever the deal is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're going to portray the other person in a negative light to build you up, to think, wow, I won the prize.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because again, that's the back to that love bombing where it strokes our egos. All of their exes are crazy, and you're the prize, and they put you on a pedestal. That's another
Hmm.
like stroke to the ego, right? That we
Hmm.
all love our ego stroked, right? Okay, this one's gonna get a little bit deeper, and I really want to touch on this one because okay, so I'm gonna tell you what the red flag is, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so your friends don't like them. Now,
Hmm.
this one is hard because it has to be also taken with a grain of salt. So, for those who weren't on the pre-show that we were on, I mentioned that right when I got engaged, my ex husband and I went to my best friend's place for a barbecue. And this is where I announced my engagement and all of that. And we're hanging out with some other friends. And then I catch her like in a bold faced lie in front of everyone else. And then later on, she tried to turn around and tell me something about my future significant other. So from that point on, I had kind of shut her out because I didn't trust her anymore, right? Because
Hmm.
I caught her in a like public, bold faced lie. And so this is tough because a lot of times you'll hear about people saying, "Oh, my friend is jealous that I'm married now," or "Oh, like my friend, just doesn't like my spouse because they don't like anybody." So let's really unpack this one because I think friends are important to weigh in on specific things. But let's talk about balancing that and really, again, being able to go back to trusting your gut.
I don't know. There's so many different approaches to take with something like that. And your experience at the barbecue, that your light bulb moment had to have been devastating, especially during a time when you were elated and you're announcing your engagement and all of that. You're getting a real taste of someone else that you had trust in and faith and you thought had your back, really wasn't the honest person that you were, that you thought they were. And I think, in my case, a lot of times it was way after the fact that I found out so many betrayals and just negative things with some friends that I thought I trusted, or I thought, you know, were sincere. So yeah, you will have some friends that will not like your ex. In fact, I had a number that didn't like my ex, and I think that they meant very well. They were
Hmm.
like, really, you can do better than this. And, you
Yeah.
know, um, what do you really see in him? And you're trying to justify, well, we have this in common and this in common. And, we like to do this together. So I'm sure you will have some friends that mean well, and boy, you wish you would have listened to them.
Hmm.
But then there are also some other friends that will not like your ex because they like your ex
Mhm.
and they want what you have. And then
Yeah.
if you look back at that dynamic of your girlfriend relationship, you might realize they've been jealous of you for years and years and years. They
Definitely.
want your success, they want your education, they want I had a very close friend who loved that I was just, open and free and you know loved making decisions and just following on my gut and doing things.
Mhm.
For some reason she didn't have that freedom, but then you look back at her childhood and she really had a lot of controls and she didn't have a lot of freedom. So of course she looked at me like, wow, Marnie really has the kind of life that I want to have. And so if you look back, you can see jealousy. You can really see jealousy even though you really at the time didn't see it. So I think friends can go either way. They could mean well, but then they can also have their own agenda.
Yeah, and it was tough because that pushed me further away from my friend and pushed me closer to the quote unquote abuser, right? So
Right. Mhm.
yeah, so it's really tough. And if you
Mhm.
want to help your friends and you want to get them to listen to you, it's about conveying a message with, intention and genuine, like a genuine concern versus it just wasn't, it didn't come off the way that, it didn't come off as concern. It came off as something else, right?
Right. And but in your case too, and in my case as well, when someone is dishonest, I mean, that is a value that I hold so dear. And once they're dishonest, once and I really acknowledge it, that's it. I can't, if they're going to be dishonest about, and sometimes it's very minor things, then when there's something big, how are they going to act? So when you find a friend has been dishonest, and that was very, very painful for me to find a very, very close friend of mine being dishonest. It in fact, in some ways, that was harder than leaving a 27-year marriage.
Yeah.
Because you really, you like to think you've got a sisterhood with some girlfriends, but
Mhm.
yeah, you got to watch out. Not everyone has good intentions.
Yeah. And I was so young at the time. I was 22. I really
Yeah.
wish I had the tools and like the coping mechanisms to be able to have those conversations back then. But
Hmm.
now, yes, but
Hmm.
before it was like a stun and you couldn't get over the stun, so you couldn't have the conversation, right? And
Right.
it was challenging to be able to have the conversation constructively, at the time.
But
So
some of these things we go through make us who we are.
yeah,
You are wiser than your years. And I know that just from our conversations. And, without going through some of the tough times that you went through, and then having to unpack that and put the pieces together and try to figure out, your role in it and their role in it and just, what it's all about. Doing the research that's necessary to kind of understand what you've gone through. I think that's all part of our journey.
yeah.
I think that I just try to justify things in a way personally, like, because if I really took everything to heart and was devastated by every devastation, I might have a hard time getting up in the morning.
Yeah.
But because I think to myself, okay, this was a learning experience. That's how I approached all sorts of adversity, with that same value of integrity, honesty, goodness. But I also look at it as it's a lens of learning, that I'm here on earth to learn these lessons. And obviously, I needed to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
Even at a young age, my mom would say to me, Marnie, you have to be God's favorite pupil because you're always learning the hard way.
Mm.
And so even at a young age, I was learning the hard way. But maybe that's how it's supposed to be for us. Maybe that is part of our journey.
It is because I was always so the type of person so afraid of making mistakes because I didn't want to be embarrassed, right? I hated
Hmm.
being embarrassed. There's nothing worse than that. And so um, having to learn through experience and getting it wrong and being able to admit, oh crap, like I did not get it right. yes, I am embarrassed and I'm taking it. That yes, I had to
Yeah.
learn that through this. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I want to end the conversation there, but there's so many more. So can we like squeeze one more in?
Sure, sure.
Because that was that you
Yeah,
had there. But
yeah, but no. So what else, what else do you think that your listeners would benefit from hearing right now
well,
after everything that we kind of talked about?
one of the things I would definitely say is that being able to start to develop their own voice in having
Mhm.
these conversations, because we have a lot of obstacles, even though we have so many more ways to communicate now than ever. Like, I have two computers in front of me, phone over
Mhm.
here, tablet over there. Like, there's so many more ways to communicate, but we're not necessarily connecting. And I think we need to like kind of unpack that a little bit,
And
especially.
and I believe the connection has to start from within you,
Mhm,
within ourselves. So before we can fully really connect with other people, we need to really take some time and quiet our minds and really, revisit us, revisit ourselves, our passions, our interests, how we look at things, and get to a little bit more secure footing with who we are and have
mhm,
a relationship with ourselves. And if there's something that we don't really like about ourselves, make a conscious effort to change that.
mhm,
We have the power within ourselves to respond to things or create things ourselves. And so I
mhm,
think that you need that foundation before you can really, you know, um, go out there in the world, analyzing all these relationships. We need to analyze ourselves first.
Amen. All right. I like that. Thank you,
Mhm.
Dr.
Yeah,
Marty. I really appreciate your
sure.
time today. This was awesome. And can you tell everybody what your most recent, latest book that's out is about?
Sure. Well, it's a five-book series called True Deceit, False Love.
Hmm.
And you can check all my books out on my website, which is www.godcametomygarage.com. And on my website, you can read about me. You can read about the books that I have authored by myself, as well as some international bestsellers that I'm involved in as an anthology books. You can check out my spiritual fiction, God Came to My Garage Sale, which is actually in talks right now to possibly be a movie. I just came back from a big book signing tour. Left the beautiful Caribbean to go to the Pacific Northwest and do a lot of traveling. Where I was promoting my books, and I was actually shocked to run into some people here and there that said, "Oh, I already know about you. I know about your books, and I have your book, and it's part of a book club or something like that." That was just so cool because I'm being an author is a very solitary thing. You're here quietly writing and, publishing, but getting out there, it's kind of nice to know that, you, your books are making an impact and helping others. So, the fifth book in the True Deceit, False Love series just became a bestseller, which is great. So, I'm published with Balboa Press, which is a division of Hay House. And,
Okay.
check out Hay House and Balboa Press because there's some great titles about spirituality, about self help, about, relationships and that type of thing. There's some amazing authors out there to check out. And actually, even on my website, I promote different authors here and there, or different podcasters. You'll see under the happenings section in my website that, I pretty much almost every day have been asked to be on a podcast because I think now more than ever people are wanting to have these conversations. It's very hard for me to even keep up with the demand, which is really um, kind of a different place to be in. But at least for right now, I'm happy having these conversations and knowing that if it even helps one person, you know, talk about the red flags or something like that, if it helps one person, we've done our job. We've done something that really makes a difference in the world.
Absolutely. Well,
Hmm.
thank you so much for being on today, and
Yeah.
it was fabulous to have you.
Well, thank you so much. I love what you do. And, you've got a great audience because they're following someone great. You've got a lot of wisdom, like I said, beyond your years. And just thank you for the opportunity and inviting me in.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marnie.
Okay.